Hi, my name is Jeana Allen, and I will be doing a summary over Chapter 6 of Learning from the Stranger. In this chapter, the author talks about 3 phases of intercultural encounter. He talks about before, so we want to be a blessing rather than a curse. He talks about during, that we need to find ways to hear well, respond considerately, and have a loving presence. And after, integrating what we have learned as evidence that the other person has been a real presence in our lives. So before the encounter, he talks about 4 kinds of learning. We have to know that there is an assumed knowledge of the world around us. He gave examples like key political figures, current TV shows, stores, banks, public signs. And if we find out about the basic knowledge of where we're going, it will show respect that I made the effort to learn about the other person's world. He also talked about being aware of some of the norms, like, for example, should women shake hands with men? Or why were people not invited to parties? He also talks about learning skills, and he says that language skills is the most important. In fact, Phoebe Dodds, a writer, also believes it will not only show respect, but others will respect you. And then having self-awareness, know that many of my own cultural habits and expectations are invisible to me, like water usage or punctuality. He also talks about useful ignorance, being aware of premature understanding, that we try so hard to understand that we put things in our own existing framework, and because we feel more secure when we understand. He talked about growing spiritually, being careful what we think of as sin. For example, people have different relationships to time. We might say that they're lazy. He also talked about humility. Learning a new language, we have to leave our language that we speak well and submit to a process that's clumsy, painful, and sometimes embarrassing. Now, during the encounter, he talks about asking respectful questions, and that demonstrates that I'm willing to learn. He said having a willingness to listen to what others has to say. And then hospitality, humility, and hearing belong together. We have to be careful not to make hospitality negative, like I'm always the host and the other is always the needy guest. Being humble enough to know that I also am a stranger, and I need to hear past my own agenda and expectations. Now, after the encounter, it can lead to change. The author Smith gives an example of the young man who learned to conserve water while he visited Switzerland, and he took that practice back to the United States. Taking off my cultural practice and putting on another cultural practice often involves laying down pride, setting aside my initial judgments. He also says it can lead to change in my life that ways could lead to greater justice, compassion, and holiness. Christine Pohl devotes an entire unit to hospitality. She says that people feel like they belong and they feel valued. And hospitality is at the heart of the Christian life. We reflect God's graciousness when we show hospitality. The Bible, the early writings of Job, he talks about how no stranger had to spend the night in the street, for my door was always open to the traveler. Hebrews talks about showing hospitality to strangers. Matthew, Jesus talks about giving food, drink, clothes, inviting the stranger in, looking after the sick, and visiting in prison. Now, I agree with the author. He talked about asking respectful questions and being willing to listen. There's a lady at my church named Zipporah, and I've done nursery now with her a couple of times. And nursery is where you go in and watch babies so that people can attend service. And the first time I really got to know her, I found out that she was actually hard of hearing. And interestingly, I grew up with hard of hearing. 3 of my siblings are hard of hearing. And so I guess it just must be natural. I was very patient with her. And she said that she often doesn't talk. People think that she's sullen or whatever because she doesn't speak, because she gets tired of people, like they get mad at her because she has to always ask them to repeat themselves. She's from Cameroon. She has a thick accent, hard of hearing. She had a stroke, so she speaks her slur. She has a little slur to her speech even. Well, the second time I did nursery, I found out that she actually has a PhD in plant biology, that she used to travel to other countries to help them with planting food. She's very humbled. There's nothing that I did not disagree with the author. Thank you very much.